Hey guys, welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to be doing our run and jump cycle. So if you've watched the last tutorial, you should be able to pick up any of the little intricacies and any sort of little tidbits of information that I portrayed in that tutorial series. So in this one I'm going to do a minimal amount of talking if I can help myself. And I'm just going to try and sort of work through getting this done. So I'm going to do this in sort of two steps. I'm going to do this run cycle part as just a cycle on the spot, and then for the jump I'm going to do the jump in a forward mode. So I'll be actually taking him off his major control circle, this circle here. Okay, so to start with I need to choose how many frames I want. So for this I want 16 frames. I'm going to do my run cycle over 16 frames, and I'm going to have my start frame as frame 0. I'm going to start with his feet and move his feet back. I'm just going to work on 1 foot at a time, and again, just like in the previous video, I'm also going to work on the curves as I go. So I've set my first major keyframes for this part here. So this is on the Translate Z, so I'm going to focus on this, and I'm going to break these weight these tangents. Sorry, I'm just going to stretch them out a little bit, just to give me a little bit of delay in the back motion, and I'm also going to do it on the top motion, but I'm going to do a bit less on the top, just to give me a little bit more of a dynamic effect, so that it's not quite so linear. And still, that looks a little bit too linear to me, so I might come in and extend this. And I'll extend the top one too. Sorry about that little delay. Just got a message, that's all. Okay, so we've got our back and forward motion. I'm relatively happy with that. I mean, maybe we could go a little further with the forward motion. Nah, that looks a little bit too far. His leg's starting to move too quickly now. So I might even die this one down just a little bit. There we go, we'll go with that. Okay, so now I've done that part. Again, I want to make sure that it's playing back at real time, which it is, which is good. Okay, so the foot's starting off in the back position, so I'm going to come to frame 4 and do my up position. So I'm going to pull the foot up and rotate it down. And in this position I'm going to have my foot rotated upwards. And then on frame 12, I'm going to have my crossover position where everything's sort of centered back in the middle. So I'm just going to zero everything out, set the keyframe, and again I'm going to come back into my curve editor and make some adjustments here. We can see that we've got some extra keyframes on here that I don't want. My up and downs look, whoops, just cancel that. My up and downs look decent, I'm happy with those. Don't have anything on Translate X. The only other thing I have are keyframes on my X-axis for rotation. And for the moment I'm relatively happy with how those are. We'll change it a little bit when it gets to about frame 10, so his foot slaps down with a little bit more vigor. But otherwise, for the time being, I'm relatively happy with that rotation. We've got a lot of stretch happening here, so I'm going to grab his waist and just lower his waist a little bit so that we can alleviate some of that IK pop that we're getting in the leg. And I'm not going to do it too far, because when I adjust the ball of this toe, that'll also help alleviate some of that stretch that's happening on this guy's leg. Okay, so at frame 0 and 16 I'm going to add some animation to the ball of his toe, so he's sort of kicking off. I'm going to right click and key selected, and middle mouse click drag to frame 16, and then do the same thing again. Key selected. So over frame 12 you should, yep, awesome. Now we should see we've got some nice motion there. Now it's happening a little bit a little bit fast, but it should look okay once we have everything else done together. We might need to slow down that Z action, or speed it up, so to speak, slowing down maybe a little bit too much on the back step, but we'll focus on adjusting that later on. For the time being, I'm pretty happy with what we've got here. We can still go in and adjust things like the toes, which I'll probably go ahead and do now. That's the toe FK controller. So from frame 0 to frame 4, I want to have the toe sort of slightly curved downwards, and I'm going to key that selected. And then at frame 8, I want the toe to be opposite. I want it to be flicked into the air, and again, key selected. And then we'll see how that goes. She gets some nice sort of little bit of floppiness on the foot, which is what we want. And for the time being, I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to copy these attributes over to my other foot. So I'm going to select all of these, go right click, copy, select my other foot, and I'm going to paste them from frame 8. And this will give me my offset. So as we can see, I got one foot's at the back at frame 0, and then by the time it gets to frame 8, that foot's at the front. So if I was to copy and paste them to frame 0, then I'd have both feet going at the back. Whereas if I copy and paste them to frame 8, then I'll get that back position from frame 8, which is what I want. And then I'll have to sort of cut and paste the frames that are after frame 16, the sort of 8 frames that are after frame 16, and paste them back at the start, so that the cycle sort of completes and doesn't just sort of stop when it gets back to 0 and travels to 8. So I'm going to right click paste, and as you can see, we've got our feet in the back position. So up until frame 16 it happens right, but then when the frames take over again, it just snaps back to the start, which is not what we want. So I'm going to come into my curve editor. Actually, no, I'll just do it from in here. So I'm going to increase my frame count just so I can see all those extra frames that are happening after frame 16. Now, I've already got frame 8. So once we take these, I don't need to take this one because that's already placed there. So I'm going to go from 16, holding shift and click and drag, and right click, copy, back to frame 0, right click and paste. And now I can get rid of everything after frame 16. As we can see, when I set this back to 16 frames, we should see that we have our feet traveling. Now at the moment it just looks like a fast walk because sort of when we run, both feet come off the ground. So that's going to need to be adjusted. And I might do that on my start and end frames. So I might have both feet off the ground at that point. So I might lift this foot up, and I'll keyframe that, shift over to frame 16, and press set a key again. So and we're going to need to fix up that sort of float down that happens, and we're going to do the same on the back foot as well. So from here I'm going to push it back and then pick the foot up and really rotate it back. We're going to require a little bit of adjustment for this part, but we'll go with this for now and see sort of what we get. So I'm going to add some ball to frame 12 on this particular foot, and I'll end up having to do the same just a little bit, but I'll end up having to do the same on the other foot. And I'm going to have a little bit less from this position. Still a bit, but not a huge amount. Key selected, middle mouse click drag to frame 0, and then key selected again because we need both our start and end frames to be the same. And from frame 8 to frame 12, I might actually go to frame 10 and start zeroing stuff out. And I'll set that keyframe. And that'll give me that sort of stomp down action that I'm expecting. Might actually rotate this foot back a little further as well. And again, I'm going to go in and try and fix up any damage to these curves that I may have done from doing this. So there's nothing on translate X, which is good. Translate Y, there will be a little. Now frame 4, I really want this to pick up a little bit. And I want these to match up. I want this tangent handle here to match up with this tangent handle so it doesn't sort of spline out, so the action stays similar. So we kind of want this curve to lead into this curve's angle. So what I might actually do is I might grab the curves that are on the other foot and I'll get rid of them, just to make life easier. And I'll copy and paste these ones again to update any changes that I made. Copy, and paste to frame 8. Increase my frame count. So from frame, so to frame 8, frame 16, so I want to copy from frame 16 to frame 20. Copy those, paste them. I can get rid of all of them now. And set my timeline back. So now both feet should be doing the same thing. Still looking a bit choppy because it's not playing back at real time. Leg's probably moving a little bit too quickly forward, so I could probably come in and adjust the weights on the translate Z's. So if I come in and select both these translate Z's and press F to focus on them, I can get rid of these, of course, because they're damaging my curve. And we'll see what that looks like without that. Yeah, still maybe spending a little bit too much time on the back steps, so I'm going to grab my back steps, actually. Okay, so that's the back step on that one. Just bear with me here for a second. I'll check all my rotations. So the back step is that one. So it's that one, and that one. I'm going to adjust this in real time, just sort of see what's happening. And we'll go with that for the time being. Something about that looks pretty good. There's still a little bit of slow happening. So we'll work with that. Okay, so for the most part I've got the feet going. There's still some other subtle stuff that I'll add probably more towards the end. But for now I'll start moving on to some of the other parts like the waist. So as we learned in class, the hip follows the leading foot, so it should rotate in the direction of the leading foot. And then it needs to be swapped over for the other foot. And then I'll set a keyframe there as well, so we should see the body sort of twisting to pull the legs. And then on the passing frame, the hips will rotate downwards in the direction of the in the downwards direction of the raised leg. So I can see that value is 8.5, so I'm going to middle mouse click drag over to 12, and I'm going to set that to a negative 8.5. And then I'm going to set a keyframe. Okay, so now I've done that. I'm going to come into my hip controller. I'm going to set keyframes on 0, 8 and 16, and they're going to be my neutrals. And then on frame 4 and frame 12 I'm going to have my down motion. I'm going to make them come down a fair bit. Maybe even a little more actually. And again, now that I've done that, I'm going to go in and adjust the curves on these. So I'm going to come into this one and have a look at these curves that I've got. So I've got no translates happening at the moment, but there will be some in a brief period. I'm going to get rid of these two keyframes because they're just sort of damaging the curve that we have. And I'm going to come into this one and focus especially on cleaning this one up. So I'm going to grab these tangent. Actually, I'm going to grab this middle one and delete it. And then I'm going to grab these top two and I'm going to weight them a little bit. And by doing this, it'll be relatively important to sort of do this up the chain just by adding a little tiny bit of weight to all of these. Otherwise, there'll be some curves which don't have any weighting and some that do, and that will really start to damage the overall look of the animation. Usually, anyway. So I'm just straightening up these tangent handles. That's looking good. I'm going to come into this one. I'm going to weight these as well, just a little bit. I don't want anything too drastic, but I'll make it look a little bit less linear. There's nothing on the rotates there. And I'm going to come into this one and adjust the up and downs. Now I'm going to add more weight to the top than the bottom. And that'll help me sort of get that gravity curve that I really want for the up and down motion. So something kind of like roughly about that for the up and down motion. And for the bottom ones, I'm going to weight those as well, but I'm just going to pull them out a little bit. Just a bit like so. And we'll see how that looks. And as the forward leg impacts, the hips will twist back. So I'm going to add that in on here as well. So that'll be in my start position. So, man, I've done it again. It's on local, that's okay. Cool. So I'm going to rotate the hips back a fraction. And I'm going to copy that information, which is on my X. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go to frame 8, paste that, and set a key. And then frame 16, paste that, and set a key. Actually, I've done that the wrong way around. My bad. That rotation has to happen on the in-betweens. sure I haven't accidentally damaged any of these rotations. It doesn't appear that I have. I'm going to come into these X rotations and I'm going to, again, just weight them a little bit. Nothing too drastic, just a little bit to give it a little bit more of a sort of dynamic feel, as opposed to a sort of linear feel that you get from these standard curves. Nothing too hardcore. We've got a relatively sort of nice bobbier feel to this run. Alright, okay, so we're going to take a break, and then when we come back we'll probably focus on doing the body and the arms and the rest of it. Alright, okay, be back soon. Okay, so welcome back. So in this part we're going to start focusing on the rest of the body. So we've got the legs for the most part sorted out. There's still a little bit of tweaking that we need to do, but for the most part it's done. So the part I'm going to work on next is I'm going to rotate his body down just so he actually looks like he's sort of traveling in some sort of direction. Now, not by a huge amount, but by enough. So that's on the x-axis, so I'm going to go through and animate that on the x-axis, and I'm going to key it from selected. Also going to copy this number so that I can come to all of these, paste it, and key selected. Now we're going to actually be animating on top of this, but for the time being, I'm just going to just block it into all of these major keyframes that we have. So now we've got him sort of permanently bent over. So the downward bend is going to happen on these frames at the same time as he starts falling. Now it's going to be delayed, but we'll do that after the fact. So on the frame 4, I'm probably going to have him bend down just a little bit. I don't want to take it too far because I'll add more bend to the sort of upper body area. So I'm going to take that number and plug it into frame 12 and then set a keyframe. And I'm just going to come in and double check that I haven't damaged any of my curves. And it doesn't appear that I have, which is excellent. Awesome. And again, I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a little tiny bit of weight to that X value. And I'm just going to generically add it to all of the curves. Again, not a huge amount, just a little bit. Okay, so the next part I'm going to work on is I'm going to work on the shoulder region, and then I'll come back and work on these parts after I've done this, as this will give me my two extremes between the between the waist and the shoulders, as the shoulders tend to work oppositely to the hips. So for example, if this is rotated on the positive X, then the shoulders tend to rotate on the negative X, and so on for most of the attributes. So I'm going to pull this over, and I'm going to do it a fair amount because I really want his back to sort of be shown on a side angle. So I'm going to do it by quite a lot in this particular example, because he's going to be throwing his arms forward quite a lot, which will facilitate quite a lot of twisting on his upper body. So I'm probably going to even go a little bit more than that, just to really exacerbate that action. And again, I'm going to keyframe that on frame 16, and then I'm going to come and put a negative in it on frame 8 and set the keyframe. And then on my in-between frames, on frame 4, I'm going to do the down rotation on the x-axis. And again, I'm going to copy that number and paste it onto frame 12 and take out the negative value. And that's looking pretty good. But what I want to do now is I want to come in and fix up these curves. So I'm going to start with this one, just the same as we did with the waist. So I'm going to come in and I'm actually going to weight these two tangents a little bit. And then I'm going to adjust these tangent handles at the end so that I get a nice smooth transition into the next cycle when we start to cycle this. Otherwise there'll be kind of a little stall area. And again, I'm going to come in and get rid of these frames that I don't want. And check my rotate X, I've got nothing on there for the time being. And I'm going to weight these as well. And we'll see what that looks like now. You're getting a really nice sort of twisty action from the body as he's running. Now, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to copy the keyframes from this from the shoulder one and paste it onto this bottom one and then dial them down. And I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do the same from the bottom hip controller to this mid controller. So I'm going to copy all the keyframes that are on this one. Copy, and hopefully this will work. Hopefully. Now I'm going to paste. Now it's obviously happening way too much. He's really sort of flailing himself around now. But the idea is to come in and sort of dial these rotations down now. So I'm going to come in and focus on these. These are sitting at 33 and then minus 33, so I'm going to dial these down to maybe say 20, and then minus 20. And that should reduce that one a lot. And I'm going to do the same on these, so I'm going to come to this one, which is minus 14. I'm going to make that maybe half, so minus 7. And then positive 7 for this one. Now, after having done that, I'm going to come in and I'm going to focus on this again, and I'm going to re-clean these tangent weights. I'm actually going to leave the weighting that's on there as is, and I'm going to pull it back. It looks a little uneven. I'm going to grab these tangent handles and just dial the weight back a little tiny bit so this curve looks a bit smoother. And then again readjust these tangent handles. Oh, stop doing that. There we go. And there we go. And what I'm going to do for them, I'm going to grab this bottom one. And again, I'm going to copy all the keyframes off this. Copy them, and I'm going to paste them to this bottom controller. I'm going to dial them back a lot. I'm also going to remove the X rotation keyframes, because I don't want those. Just for the time being, I just want these X and Ys. I'm going to focus on these, so I'm going to grab this. It's set to 18, so I'm going to dial that back to, say, something really sort of small, so maybe a third of that number. We'll try a third and see how that goes. So I might stick with about 5. And then go to these ones and set these to minus 5. And the same for these ones, so I'll go to a third, so these will be about 3-ish, I guess. And then minus 3. And I will have to adjust the weights on these, because otherwise the weights will be way too large. Oh, actually, will they? No, that should be okay, actually. And I'm going to sort of play that back to see what it looks like. And I've got that real nice snappy action that's happening with the shoulders, as you expect when the arms sort of are throwing it forward, but it still seems a little bit too exaggerated, so I'm actually going to come in and dial these back just a fraction more. So there's 20, so I might go to say 12 and just really sort of dumb those down a little bit. And minus 12. And for these ones I might go to say minus 3, halve them out again. And then 3. And I'll go to this one and readjust these tangents. And this will start to look like a really nice effect once we add a little bit of offset to these. Alright, so now we've got the body happening pretty much how I want it to be happening. I'm going to add some rotation to the X value on these. Again, it's just a matter of sort of coming in, and I'm just going to shift select both of these at the same time and do those at the same time. So I'm going to set a keyframe at the start and end and the middle, and then it's on this frame here where my bend is going to happen. So I'll rotate him down a bit like so. And that will start to really shine through once we put that offset on. And again, I'm going to come into these two and adjust the X curves. Actually, I'm going to select them and make sure I haven't damaged anything, which I have. I've damaged my... So I'm just going to make sure I clean those back up again. And what the hell has happened to this one? Something awry has gone on here. It's happening on this one as well. So I'm going to need to go in and repair this. Something's gone wrong. Actually, I'm going to Control Z back to the point before I set the rotation on these. And come back and delete that one. Delete that one. Okay, so I got that back. I'm going to just grab my X axis. I'm just going to set a keyframe where I need them instead of pressing S. It tends to damage keys and makes life a bit of a pain in the butt. I'm going to come in and select my X axis, and he needs to be rotating down. So positive is down. Pull him down by maybe 6, I guess. And it'll be the same for this one. So I'll just grab both of these, set them to 6. And I'm going to weight all of these tangents as well. Just by a bit. And again, we'll do the same for this one here. So I'll come in, move these to both the 6. Select all of them, free their tangent weights, come and select them. Just extend those out a little bit. And again, once we start offsetting this, we should get a really nice effect. Okay, so now we've worked on the majority of the body, so I'm going to come in and work on the arms now. So I'm going to work on one arm. I'll probably work on this side arm first. Rotate it down, probably rotate it forward. Now you probably notice that I'm not using the gimbal controller. I forgot when I started doing this. I'm using the local controller, which is very similar to the gimbal controller. But it's very important not to use the world controller when we're animating. Usually we'd want to use the gimbal controller, but you know, if we make a mistake and we're on the local controller, then you know, we can get away with it. It's not the worst thing in the world. Okay, so this arm's going to be pretty much up, and I'm going to sort of bring his arm across his body as he's going to be sort of throwing his weight to the side that he's about to bear his weight onto. and the other arm's going to be doing something different, but I'm just going to focus on the first two parts of the arm first. So I'll focus on this part. I'm going to set the keyframe, and then when his arm's in the back position, I'm really going to throw his arm right back. I'll also pull it in a fair bit as well. And I'm going to straighten his arm so his arm's virtually at full stretch. Maybe a little less than full stretch. Again, I'm going to come in and I'm going to, this is the y-axis that I'm going to be affecting at the moment. I want to add a little tiny bit of delay to the back part of the arm. So from frame 8 it is. I just want to add a little bit of delay to this. So I'm going to grab my tangent weights and just add a little bit of weight to it. And I'm going to grab all of them and do the same thing so that the backstroke has a little bit more weight than the front stroke. Just so it looks like he's putting a little bit more effort into sort of pulling his arm forward as opposed to it just quickly happening. And we need a little bit more of a stall at the start, so I'm going to go in and try and add that little stall. So that's these top ones. I'm going to play this while I adjust these just to try and see what's going on as I do it. Yeah, that's good. So it's stalling sort of as I would expect it to from the front position, and it's still stalling in the back position. I might increase the back position a little more though. Excellent. And I'm going to do the same for the lower part of the arm. I'm going to come in and I'm going to stall this one out quite a bit, and then I'm going to grab the lot of them, do the same thing again. Awesome. And now we want to do the same thing on one arm that we do on the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically mirror these positions. So instead of copying and pasting, because we've used some sort of a multitude of different sort of rotations, that's not going to translate too well onto the other side. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to just use the middle mouse click method to freeze this arm where it is now and go to frame 8, and then I'm just going to try and match up one arm to the other arm. That's not going to look perfect because the rest of the body's not in the correct position either. But for the most part we should be able to get it relatively similar. We should be able to get the same sort of rotations happening on the arm. And I'm going to set that there and set this one here as well. And I should be able to see whether these are in the same position. So the Y one, I might copy the Y axis. I'll paste that on there. It's going to be a minus though. And I might grab that x-axis one as well, which is minus 14. I'm going to set that key. And And there's also Z translation happening, so I'm going to grab that as well. Actually, I've got to grab it from the right position, don't I? 69. And I'm going to set the key. So now these should be pretty much mirrored. Pretty much, anyway. And again, I'm going to middle mouse click drag back to 0, and then basically copy and paste the keyframes from this one to the other one. So the first one I want the y-axis, so I'm going to copy that. And it's going to be without the minus. This one as well. And I'll also copy this one. It's going to be a minus in front of this. Middle mouse click drag, keyframe that. And now I still need to do the same sort of weighting to this other side, but for the time being I'm just going to sort of leave it as is, and we'll get back to that in a sec. So for this one, there's only one number that I need. It's just the one off here at frame 8, which is 13.233. I'm going to come into frame 0 and paste that to 13. That's going to be minus 13.223. And I'm going to set that key. And then middle mouse click drag to reset the key over here. Now it's time to come into the curve editor and adjust those curves. So I'm going to come in and have a look at what I did for this one for reference, and I can see that I've weighted out the bottom and the top. So this one's going to be opposite. There's going to be more weight on the outside ones as opposed to the inside. And that's just because the animation's offset. So this action's happening, well, 8 frames after this action. So I'm just going to weight these ones first, whereas I did the other ones, the middle one first last time. I'll weight that out a fair bit. And grab this middle one, do the same thing again. Grab both of these. And weight them out quite a lot. And I'm going to come in and do the same for this upper part of the arm as well. And again, same deal. And for the most part, I believe I've left most of these weights alone. Yes, I have. It's just a forward motion that I'm weighting at the moment. So we take that down to 15 frames, or 16 actually, but take it back up to 16. At frame 4, never mind. Alright, so I'll do the hands now. So the hands are relatively easy. So in this position I'm going to have them folded down a bit. Maybe have them up like so. And we'll have them in a fist position as well, but for the time being I'm just going to go with that. 19, 26 and 26. Is that the same? Trying to figure out if that's the same. Looks roughly the same to me, so that'll do. And in this position, I'm going to have the hand go back. 6, 27, 32. Six, 27, 32. Cool. I'm going to go 6, 27 and 32. That's going to be minus 32. And it should be minus 6 too, I think. Yep. Awesome. Alright, so now it's time to add the head wobble. Now this should all start to mesh together once we start adjusting our offsetting, or our offsets. So I might go with up position here, and at frame 4, I'm going to have him on his down position. And I'll do the same on his neck as well. And again, I'm going to come in and adjust the curve on those. Grab all these and weight them. Not a great deal, just a little. And I'll do the same for the hands as well. I'm sort of keep an eye on how much I'm weighting each of these, because I'm going to be doing the same to the other hand as well. So I'm going to pull these out, maybe 1 bar or 1 whole bar over. So I'm just using this unit here to keep a tab on how much. I'm going to do that same thing with all of these. Pull them out 1 bar. That way I can do the same thing to these. There we go. I'm going to save this scene, which which I probably should have done a little while ago. Save thing as moon run 1. I'm going to play that back and see how it's looking. So it's looking pretty good at the moment. Everything's still sort of happening in unison. I haven't got any translate on this, so I'm going to add that now. I'm going to do that on my frame 4 and frame 12. I'm going to add the little tiny bit of weight going over to each side that you would expect. So let's translate X at 311. It's going to be minus 311 for frame 12. And I'm going to come in and fix up this curve that we've got here, because it's a chunky curve at the moment. Weight it a little bit. Adjust the tangent handles. And there we go. Okay, and so far that's the basics of getting our run cycle laid out. So when we come back, we might adjust do a little tiny bit more to the feet and work with these pole vectors a little bit. But I mean, aside from that, we're going to pretty much leave it how it is, and we're going to go into the sort of cycling phase, and we'll cycle it and start adding some offsets to this animation. All right, cool. Okay. Okay, welcome back, guys. So now we're just going to finish off the sort of final little touches. We're not going to do too much more to this before you sort of take it into a cycling stage. I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of animation to the hand, so it's not quite so open-handed, I guess you'd say. So I'm going to come back to frame 1. I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of curl to the hands and keyframe that. Key selected, and key selected. Come into my middle frame, key selected again. And again, I'm going to go to the mid frames and just modify it a little tiny bit so we can sort of get a little bit of tiny secondary action. Key selected, come to frame 12 and then key selected again. And I'm going to copy those keyframes and copy, and I'm going to paste them onto the other hand, and hopefully that works. I'm not sure if it will, but we'll see. Paste. So it's coming into an open position, into a closed position. Yep, cool, that's working. One other little thing I'm going to work on is the hands as they pass the body. So I'm going to add a keyframe on the rotation of this, just on the translate Z, so his hand actually passes his body without sort of intersecting through it. We'll sort of see what that looks like as we go. And then the same on frame 12. Make sure there's no clipping, and there's no clipping. Awesome. And I'm going to do the same on the other hand. So frame 4, I'm just going to rotate it out a little bit. Frame 12, rotate it out a bit as well. It seems to be coming a little bit further over to one side than the other, so I'm just going to check to make sure that that's whether that's the case or not. Oh, it shouldn't be. The rotation is the same on my rotation's a little bit different, but that's okay. We can deal with that. We can live with a little bit of asymmetry. And now I guess the only other thing that we could really do to this is I might spend a little bit more time on the feet and the pole vectors, just cleaning those up. So all of this information that I'm going to be doing is on the translate Z, so I'm just going to go directly into my translate Z. I'm going to delete the keyframe on frame 10, so I've got a nice even amount of keyframes to work with. And from this position here and these keyframes, so I'm going to be skipping from frame 4, so frame 4 is where the foot comes forward, and I want the foot to flare out so that it travels past this leg nicely. But for the rest of them, I want the foot to be going in a little tiny bit, not a great deal, but just a little bit. So that it swings out, comes back in, and then we get that nice sort of little tiny bit of swing out. I'm going to do the same, so I've gone to 0.2, and I'm going to do the same for the other foot, only this time it'll be minus 0.2. And again, it's just a matter of deleting this middle frame, finding the frame that it's going to happen, so it's going to be on the frame 12. In this case, I'm going to grab all the other frames, and I'm going to set them to minus 0.2. And now we've got a little tiny bit of sort of circular motion happening on the feet. The only other thing that I'm going to do to this is I'm going to weight these tangents just a little bit, just in this region here. And again, I'm going to sort of keep an eye on how much I weight these by, so I'm going to pull them over to the next closest unit. And that should make that rotation a little bit more overt. And I'm going to do the same on this one just here. So I'm going to grab all these here, weight them, and pull them over to their next closest unit. And we'll play that back and see what that looks like. Excellent. The only other little tiny bit of information I'm going to do to this is leave the foot coming down like so. As the foot leaves the ground, I'm going to add a little tiny bit of rotation, instep rotation. Actually, I'll do it on the toe twist feature. Key selected. And that way his feet will sort of tweak a little tiny bit at the back. And they're going to sort of stay tweaked as the foot sort of comes forward. Key selected. And on top of that, there's also going to be a little bit of droop to the foot, so the foot's going to have a little bit of roll to it. And I'm going to keyframe that on the translate Z. And it's important to remember to do this to the other ones as well, so I'll focus on my curves here. It should look a little bit cleaner once I adjust that pole vector so that it's more matched with the foot, so it doesn't look like the foot's broken. But I'm going to come and do this to my other foot now as well. So I've already done the Z on this one, so I'm going to go ahead and do that little tiny bit of twist. So from frame 12 to 16, so frame 12 there will be none, and then at frame 16, in this case, there will be a little tiny bit of toe twist going on the in for like a little bit of instep. Sorry. I'm just going to go 0.2 because I don't want it to be majorly overt. And I'm going to middle mouse click drag and set that keyframe over here as well. And now there should be a little bit of twist as the foot goes to its back position. And I feel there's a bit more on this one. This one's toe twist is going to 0.3 and this one's only going to 0.2, so I might come in and remedy that. And I'll also add the little bit of twist. A little tiny bit of droop to the foot. And it was 9 before from memory. I might make sure I do it about the same. I might also roll the foot out a little tiny bit as well for the sort of leading step in. Key selection, I'll do the same for the other foot at frame 0, so I'm just going to twist the foot out a little tiny bit. Key selected, and key selected. Let's make sure that we're roughly about the same. I say it's about 10 on that one. And there we go. So this needs to be smoothed a little bit, this twist action. It's happening a little bit too hastily. So I'm going to come in and adjust that twist. I weight this tangent here on frame 4 where it starts and just make it happen a little bit slower. It will speed into this position now, but we'll see how that looks. Yeah, that's looking a bit better. Starts out more slowly, which is kind of what I want. This one's happening from frame 12, I believe, so I'm going to grab the frame 12, grab this tangent handle, and just stretch it out a little tiny bit. And we'll have a look at what this starting to look like now without our curves shown. So we'll turn all the curves off. As we can see, we've got relatively decent little run animation happening here. So I'm going to turn all my controls back on again. And what's left to do? The pole vectors. So we're just going to do the pole vectors. So I'm going to go to frame 0 and sort of line these pole vectors up so my character's legs are looking about right. So I'm just kind of lining these up with the angle of the foot. I'm going to set a keyframe there. Go to frame 4. Pull it in a fair bit, not too far in. And then again, I'm going to copy this one, paste it on the end. And then I'm going to do the same for the other foot. So from frame 1, I'm just going to pull it out a little bit. Frame 4, it's going to come in a bit. Frame 8, it's going to come out a fair bit. And then at frame 12, it's going to come in. And then frame 16 will be the same as frame 0. Alrighty, so now we've got this animation that's at our stage where we can start blocking it. Not blocking it, offsetting it. We need to cycle this animation, then we can start offsetting it to start to get some nice fluid motion. Excuse me. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to start cycling this. Okay. Alright, welcome back, guys. Okay, so it is now time to cycle this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our curve editor, and I'm going to turn everything off except my curves, and I want to grab my curves in a polygon object mode. And from here, I want to select all of the curves that I have in my scene. I'm just going to zoom out to make sure there's no floaters anywhere or anything like so. And I'm going to cycle these. So post-infinity cycle and pre-infinity cycle. And now I'm going to set this to some division of 16, so I'm going to go 160. And now, when I go polygons, we should see that it cycles pretty well. So now we can start offsetting stuff. So I'm going to set this back to 16. And again, I'm going to start selecting the individual curves that I want to start offsetting. So I'm going to start offsetting the spine. So I'm going to start with the spine. I'm going to grab the first control on the spine, grab the curves, and I'm going to press W to make sure I have my move tool selected, and I'm going to offset these just by 1. And then I'm going to grab the next one, grab all of those curves and offset them by 2. And then I'm going to offset the next lot by 3. And then I'm going to see how that looks. And whoops, I seem to have missed something. I'm just adding a little bit of downward motion onto this one. Not a great deal, just a little bit. I forgot to add that in. Make it a little bit less. Awesome. Okay, and with the arms, because it's a run, he's thrusting his arms, so I'm actually going to offset these backwards. So I'm going to offset them maybe back to -2 maybe, and we'll see if that looks right. It does. However, I'm going to reduce the offset on my shoulders now so that the action's not too far apart. Actually, I'll offset that back to -2 as well. Might go back to -3 and see how that looks. It's just a matter of trying to make this look appropriate. So now he's twisting the right way. I'm going to grab my rotate X, however, and I'm going to pull that one, offset that one back to say 3. Take it to 3. And then the twist action should still be happening, so he'll still be sort of forcing his arms forward. But he should still have that sort of slight bobble effect going on, which is what we're after. So that's on 3, so I'm going to come up to the neck controller. I'm going to take that to 4, and then the head to 5, and see how that goes. And then the head to 5. See how that's translating. And I'm going to dial that back to say maybe 2. Just a matter of sort of finding where is the sweet spot. And I think 2 is good for the head. Alright, so now I've done that, I want to do some offsetting on the elbow joints. I've done the arms, yep. So I'm going to grab the 2 elbow joints and offset them forward, because I want them to sort of lag behind the arms a little bit. I'm going to go to 2 and see how that looks. And then the idea is that they should start to look a little bit floppy. Yep, that's pretty much what I want. And once I've done that, I'm going to come in and grab the hands and offset them to 2 initially, and then we'll see what they look like from there. Can add a little more on the hands, just an extra frame maybe. And okay, I'm going to do the same for the fingers. I'm going to pull his arms back 1 frame. There's a little too much action happening there. So grab both of these, pull them back just to -1. See what that looks like. There we go. That looks a little smoother. And that'll do it for our run cycle for the time being. I mean, we could go in and we could probably make further adjustments to make this look even better, but I'm happy with that for the time being. Actually, I might just add one more little tiny bit of animation to this. When he's hanging over the leg, I might just tilt him over a little bit to each side. Just a fraction. Copy that number, key selected, paste it, and get rid of the minus. And see what that looks like. And then I'll go in and adjust those values. We'll see what this looks like. Otherwise we can just delete these if they look like it's adding too much information. Oh, better turn the right ones off. And that's looking pretty good. Alright, cool. Awesome. Okay, so we've done the cycling. So now we're at the stage where we want to sort of turn this into tracks information. But before we turn it to tracks information, I'm actually going to work on this scene further and actually have him do the jump as well. And then once I've sort of done all the components, I will then go ahead and convert this into tracks information. So we're going to sort of animate the whole thing in the one scene. Probably a good idea to save this scene, so just save it. And from here, I'll start working on my separate tracks clips. So I've got the run set up. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to save this scene out as my run, and then save it again as my we'll say jump or blend first, but we're going to say jump for the time being. All right, so okay, so I'm going to save this as. So I've already saved it as Moon Run 1, so I'm going to save this as Moon. We'll go blend 1. So now we've got 2 of the same scene saved with no changes. And the idea is to grab our nurse curves, select all of our curves, and then from frame 16, which is the end of our cycle, we want to set a keyframe so that everything is set, and then we want to delete everything before and after that frame. So I don't want any information other than this, and this should still be I'm going to Control Z that information for now. Grab all these controllers. I'm going to show polygons. Grab all these, set key, and then go to here and set the key. I'm going to turn my infinities off. I'm going to grab these and go curves.